We never think of searching until we lose our way. Worry about the wrong until the right is torn away. We don't consider healing until the pain becomes so strong, or think of restitution till everything we have is gone. With harm toward none, we could rise above this moment. With harm toward none, we would not be turned aside. With harm toward none, we could work for love and wisdom. Be sure that no one's left behind. For the good of all who wonder, for the good of all who've tried, the good of all who might have loved but were cruelly left behind, for the good of all who trusted and were played like any fool, for believing they could win if they just played by all the rules. I will no longer curse their blindness. I'll offer them my hand. Listen through their anger until their hearts regain command. Lead them to this healing well so they see their inner light and know there's nothing here to fight. With harm toward none, we could rise above this moment. With harm toward none, we would not be turned aside. With harm toward none, we could work for love and wisdom. Be sure that no one's left behind. With only peace and love to guide us, we could be what's here inside us. Harm toward none means no one left behind.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Pagan Music Association, Who Am I? And the song you just heard is With Harm Toward None, and that is by our very own Jon Anastasio. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's good to interview you. I'm really loving this, sitting down with artists and getting to know them a little bit. And it's wonderful to be able to share with everyone. Because as we were talking in the beginning, it's always good to get to know the artist and where they're coming from, and it really sheds light on the music. And first, what I want to start with is, how did you get into music?
Well, it's I will make a very long story short. You know, like a lot of people, I started in school, in the choir, in school, in elementary school, middle school, high school. But I got into playing sort of what has turned into independent music in, you know, sort of my late teens when the Beatles showed up, which will give you a clue to how old I am. But you know, I had a high school band, played lead guitar and sang, and Had a lot of fun with that. But I discovered as I went through the next few years that I was really more oriented to folk music, and my stuff ends up being sort of folk rock. There's some stuff that's very definitely folk, and some that my energy shifts, and I got to put a little more into it. And it really all depends on the kind of music I'm trying to create. And I guess it was starting around the 80s. I started writing seriously because I started feeling like I had something I wanted to say, and started recording in the 90s, and put out a few albums that were a couple of albums in the 90s that were that are on my digital distribution on my Bandcamp page and stuff. But the inspiration for it really came from, I guess I've been on a pagan path for a very long time, leaving, like a lot of us, some version of Christianity. For me, it was Catholicism. And, on the one hand, in choir and stuff, I did a lot of sacred music and learned to sing and learned to sort of approximate reading music. And it really just resonated with me. I mean, I realized it was a part of who I am, that music would always be a part of who I am. And so when I started writing, it was a combination of wanting to really play the songs that I kind of wanted to hear, and write a style of music that really fit for me. And so, and of course, as I started writing it, being on a pagan path, which early on was a very eclectic path, I found myself wanting to talk about some of the things that I believed and the principles that were important to me, and the way that I saw the world, the universe, spirit. And that started to become more and more of an influence. And it became kind of a combination of looking at those really big themes and those big ideas, and also looking what was going on around us. And like a lot of us, I think, experiencing the contrast between how the mundane world works and what we know is possible from a spiritual perspective.
Yeah,
So it all started very young.
yeah, well, I think that it does. I think that when we come into this world, some of us, we kind of keep that. I know for a lot of people, it's kind of shoved out at a young age, but for many of us, we have that different world of wonder within us, and we start to. It starts in nature. You start feeling you hear the sound of the animals and the birds, the bugs and the wind, and you see this. It's a frequency, right? So I get that, and I can see how you could do that. I mean, especially through Catholicism, because they do a lot of the singing, and a lot of that is the harmonics of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't raised Catholic, but I have experienced, and I've been able to see the singers, and I think it's beautiful. I mean, to hear like Ave Maria sung like that is absolutely just breathtaking. So I really understand that with you. So with this song, with harm toward none, what was the inspiration of that song for you?
Well, that song is the last one on an EP I put out, I think it was last year, called American Shadow. And what was going on in a fairly condensed period of time, if you remember, was we had the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we had the discovery of the Native American boarding schools, the mass graves at the Native American boarding schools in Canada, and we have them here too. It just hasn't been talked about quite as much. But so that album was the first song on that album. The title song, American Shadow, is an angry song. And the others, there are 5 or 6 songs on that EP. And the others go from cynical to a little snarky, trying to be humorous, to when I really kind of looked at the catalog of songs I was putting in that EP, I can't stay in that negative place or that shadow place too long without needing to just sort of pull my head out of the water and say, okay, so what do you do about it? And being a Wiccan, the principle of harm none is fairly important to me. And I know that across the pagan world, we have a lot of different ways of looking at that particular teaching, and that's okay. I think the point is that the point of the song is that we keep searching until we find what feels right for us. We keep trying to work through all of the stuff that I had already talked about on the EP. And ultimately, until we really engage with each other, listen to each other, and recognize that we may not all live the same way, and there's a plurality of ways to live in this world without causing positive harm. And that seemed to me to be, sort of the foundational thing in terms of a solution. There's an endless list of problems we need to solve, but in terms of the sort of higher order solution, it's really making the decision that we're going to find answers that enable everyone to flourish, everyone to live the way they want to live. And that's really what the message of that song is. That's what I'm trying to get across.
I totally agree with that, because as we see in our world, I mean, you talked about when Russia invaded Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Even in our world right now, we have like, I believe they said 22 wars going on right now.
Yeah.
And we're only hearing about Russia, Ukraine, and now Israel and the Hamas. And, we're only hearing those, but there's 22 wars going on right now. Mm-hmm. And as we look at it, and I understand about harm none kind of aspect, because those who are in the path of the wise, or in the craft, Wiccan, witchcraft, whatever, there is a dogma there that is they only do evil. And and I've heard it, I don't think that you can, by my accent, obviously I'm from the South, so I've been around the Bible Belt a lot of my life. I've lived around the world, and I've lived in a different country, and I've lived in the northern, like the Northwest. I've lived up there, but in living in the South and living around the Bible Belt, it's a little differently. Mm-hmm. And if we look at some of the stereotypes that we get, it can be disheartening, and it's good to say, well, look, it's one thing to go out and maliciously hurt someone. It's another thing to protect yourself. But right. We also have to understand that, there is an energy here. And if we try to go along the concept of, if we want tolerance, then we have to show tolerance. And that is one thing that many people, that escapes people, is like, no, my way is the right way, the only way, and this is how we do it. And that's not so. We're in a big world here with a lot of different beliefs and stuff. So I fully understand that song, because, and especially when you're starting out on your path, you're like gung-ho into, oh yes, this is it, and then after you've been on it, and I've been on my pagan path for over 20 years. So yeah, you start saying, if we want tolerance, we must be tolerance. And we start approaching it in a different, I don't want to say a higher perspective, more of an evolved perspective, so to speak. So that is really great, the way that you did, that album there, how you started at one place and you learned and you grew, because that does show the human evolution of emotions, of working through it and going through the shadow, because that is, many people talk about shadow work now, and shadow work is good, but we can't stay there. It's just a place to visit and to go through, not a place to set up shop and live forever. Mm-hmm. So for being a pagan musician, what is the best thing about being a pagan musician for you?
Huh. Well, it's interesting because I guess it goes back to the inspiration for the songs, the inspiration for the lyrics. When you're writing, you can sometimes feel like it's just for yourself. You're writing the song, and is anybody going to relate to it? I mean, the one of the when I talk about starting writing, actually writing songs that I thought I could inflict on other people around 1984, 85-ish. I started hearing, there was the urge to share it, and sharing some of these messages with the larger world. I mean, the music industry as a whole isn't necessarily always interested in the deeper meaning of things, and so I think the best thing about it is being able to put these thoughts out there in an artistic way and have people relate to it, and have a community of people know where the community is that's going to know what you're talking about. That's great. And the fact that, I jokingly say something, music is a share toy. I mean, it's like I can sit in my room and play guitar all day long. But it really is really fulfilling for me to be able to share it with other people. And sometimes you get surprised. There was a song I wrote in the 90s. There was a young boy who was killed in gang crossfire in Roxbury, Massachusetts. And I was deeply affected by this. And I was living in a white suburb of Boston, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking around and I'm talking to people, and for everybody around me, it just kind of didn't even notice, or didn't seem to notice. I mean, maybe they had private thoughts about it, I don't know. But I wrote a song that's on my war prayer album called Atlas, which was about him. And so I sang it one night at a show I was doing with a couple of other people in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I played the song, and afterwards it was stunning for me, because this woman walks up to me and says, "You wrote that song about this boy Jermaine?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "I'm his aunt." And I said, "Whoa, okay." And so we chatted for a while. She said, "I think his grandmother needs to hear that song." And so I went down to Roxbury and I sat with his grandmother and I gave her a copy of the cassette, and they ended up asking me to come and perform it at a tree planting ceremony in his honor about 5 or 6 months later. And there were a couple of hundred people there. And the minister who was leading the sort of prayer ceremony for the tree planting, and for him, the memorial for him, he presented her with a cassette, with the cassette of the song as part of the ceremony. I was like, I really kind of felt at that moment that if I never did anything else with music again, that was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because it really made a difference for these people. But then, I was playing at the Ormond Live Festival, not this past one, but the one last year in September. And I played some of the songs from my November Moon album, which the title song on that album, November Moon, was about the time frame around this time in 2020. And if you remember what was going on then, we were all locked down. We had the election. It was a full moon. We had our full moon. It was an eclipse. And there was all of this energy. And that title song is essentially a prayer to the goddess to get us through all this, because of everything we were going through. And the rest of it, when I write songs, I don't necessarily tell the story of what was going on. In that song, I kind of do, but the rest of the songs on that album were more the things that people were going through during that time frame that I was going through personally, putting the stories out there of the impact of the lockdowns on relationships, on the way we were living in society, the way we were living with each other. And some of them ended up being heartbreak songs, and some of them ended up being, again, ending the album on a more positive note. There's a song on that album called Open Hearted, which carries very similar messages to what with harm toward none says. But I was playing some of the songs, particularly there's one song on there called Somebody's Gonna Love You Again, which is my personal best in terms of the number of words in a title. But that song was basically a hopeful song of coming out of heartbreak, right? And this guy walks up to me and says, you know, I was just coming here to kill time. I've been living with my girlfriend for 3 years, and she told me this morning that she's moving out and she already had started packing. And I really needed to hear your stuff today. It really gave me hope. And when stuff like that happens, that's, you know, that I started asking myself a little before that. I said, you know, what is this? What is music really for? Right? Yes, it's entertaining, but it does more than that. And you know, I'm actually in my 4th year of the 1-year course in Bardic Druidry through OBOD, and you know, being a bard, being a storyteller for the purpose of connecting with people's hearts is really what this is all about. And being a pagan and a musician allows me to do that. You know, because given our orientation to the old ways, the old gods, to, you know, the fundamental spiritual foundation of the universe, however we understand it, is something that we can share. And if we can do it artistically, that's great. If we can do it in prose, that's great too.
You know, when you were saying that, it was like when you first began, before you mentioned the Druid, I'm like, that's what I was hearing, because even as we read, that's what the bards did. They told stories, and you know, and Druidry was an oral tradition. Everything was passed down. I mean, you know, how many things did you have to remember, and how, you know, all of these different things, because they were the storytellers of the time. And in every indigenous culture, when you take it back to the roots, they always had that one person that was the storyteller, or the people, and it was usually passed down in family lines. And then still, when some of the tribes that still live in our world, the hunter-gatherer tribes, because there are still some that exist, they still have those storytellers. They still have that. And to listen to them, they tell a very different story than our what would you say, the scholarly people of our day do. And that's something to look at as well. But yes, you hit on those, and that's very fitting for you. For me, all artists, you know, like especially in our genre, the folk, the telling of the stories and stuff, that always relates to me as bard. And to me, that's important. That's more, and even in the day, they were very important. They were very highly respected in the day. And unfortunately, that's something that has, you know, in today's music, in the popular music, it's just, you know, I look at it and I'm like, this is music, you know, and it's like, okay. But, you know, that's one thing I love about pagan music, is because it sticks to that. It sticks to the roots. It brings the roots back, and it brings a part of our culture, no matter where we came from, brings it back, because, you know, essentially we are, especially, you know, those of us that, you know, were cut off from our cultures. We were cut from the root, you know, and if you damage your root, the plant dies. And I feel that the pagan music, you know, such as yourself and others that are still doing this, it is treating the roots to help the trees grow again.
Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, I think, you know, when you look, I mean, there's such a diversity of music on IPMA, and you know, and on other platforms, pagan musicians who are such different styles. You know, I'm real different from Cloud. I'm real, you know, and we're both different from Damn the Bard. We're both different from Brian. We're both different from Marin. and
Right.
and we're all, but we each have our way of doing it. And I think, from my perspective, it give being a pagan musician. I played at the Jacksonville Pagan Pride event in September, and it really, when I got on stage there and I looked out at who was there, it felt like home. It felt great. And giving us the time and space to express the inspiration that we get from spirit. um, you know, some of us, everybody makes a different contribution to trying to make things better. Our majority culture is in trouble. And the stories that we have to share and the ways we can act on those stories as pagans, is really important, I think, to the healing of
Mm,
of the world. And we each can do what we can. And if sharing this music is a way of helping, then I'm delighted. So.
right. As long as, I've always been that kind. As long as I can help one person from this,
Mhm.
then I've done good.
Yeah.
Because helping one person, that person helps another person, and so forth. It's like planting a seed for the future. And I think that is a great thing. So, in saying all those good things, what is the most challenging thing about being a pagan musician?
Well, so yeah, I was thinking about this because you were kind to send me the question. So I was thinking, on the one hand, the challenges are the same as for any independent musician, which is to get your stuff heard, right? And it's the online streaming industry is bewildering. It's really tough to navigate it. There's so much out there, and being able to get your stuff to the people who will resonate with it is always a challenge. It's something I think we all think about every day. Um, I know there are a lot who are better at that sort of thing than I am, but that also gets to talking about IPMA. But there the the other part of it is that, like, I'll do shows like Pagan Pride. I'll put songs out on YouTube and on Bandcamp, and notify people on Facebook that I've put them out. And so getting to the pagan community that way, obviously, is it's not getting to everyone, and I don't think everyone is going to like everything. So I'm not expecting everybody to sort of jump up and down about it. But the other part of it is, the challenging part of it is, well, the other thing is, I end up playing shows at bars and taverns and places like that, and you sort of got to edit the song list a little bit sometimes. But it's a different song list than you would do with a pagan audience. Although we all like all that music too, the other kind of cover songs and all that stuff. But probably the most challenging thing about it is the stuff that I have to say. For example, on that American Shadow album, I'd love to get that out further. And it's, as I said, the music community down here there are a lot of bands and a lot of single musicians, duos, trios who are doing a lot of cover songs and some of their own originals. And finding the audience for this kind of thing is probably the biggest challenge, to really
Right.
be able to have the conversation.
Yeah, I can understand that. I can get that. So I think that, especially in this area, I think that, I don't know, a lot of people would even say they would go to the taverns and they would go to the bars and play, and they still play the music and they're surprised. But I mean, I totally understand that because, being down here, I get it. I get it.
We play,
So,
and we play it, and we can get surprised too. Uh,
right.
People who say, "Hey, I got what you were trying to say," and it's like, okay, good.
And that's good, is when you get that message across. That to me is a good
Mhm.
thing, because as soon as you get that message across, you're opening up a new perspective.
Yeah.
And we can get this way because we are human. We can get so focused upon what we think is right, and our ideals. We can get blinders on, and we fail to see what's going on around us. And it's a good way to kind of say, hey, how about, let's look at this thing from a different perspective. It's one of those hangman aspects of the tarot, the hangman. Let's just turn
Right.
things upside down and let's look at it a different way. So, how can the IPMA help you enhance your musical reality?
Well, the platform is great. I really need to make better use of it. I've been a member for a year, and initially we got some things out there, but it's really, I don't really know the answer to that other than I need to be more engaged with it.
Yeah. And I will say, as someone that does struggle with this, it's very hard to promote yourself. It's very hard to do that, and even share some of your things. I know that there's certain things that I have shared, and everybody's like, why don't you put that out there? People will love it. It's like, but it's my baby. It's my baby.
Oh yeah, there is
And
that too. Yes, absolutely.
yeah, so and a part of that is like, you expose yourself, and you already feel exposed because you're playing your music, you're singing your words,
Mhm.
and people don't quite realize, but when you start putting words to paper, when you start physically writing, you start getting it out there, and then you start verbalizing it, it changes things, and changes things not only around you but within you. And it kind of makes you a little guarded, and that vulnerability comes up, and a whole bunch of different things. But yeah, I understand, but we'll get you out there and get you more active in it.
Appreciate that.
So, do you have a message that you would like to share with others?
Yeah, I think um, keep going.
Yeah.
The words that we put out, whether they're musical or not, whether you're writing a book or a blog or writing music and sending a message that way, they're meant to, I this is something I'm speaking to myself as I say this too, not just to other people. Those words are meant, they they came to you for a reason, and they're meant to reach the people who need to hear them, and you may not know who those people are. Like I said, with the surprising kind of things that have happened to me, but you never know whose life you may make a little bit better, or who may be struggling with the same thing you are, that you're putting out a song about, or something you've learned that's going to help somebody else get through a tough time. And so keep going is probably the main thing I would say. Is it's worth it. It's making a difference, and you may not know where or with whom.
I agree with that. Keep going. That's one thing I say, just keep going.
Yeah.
Just keep going, because I know that everything that has happened in the past 3 years has put a lot of people um, in a dark place, in a shadow, and that's just the thing. You have to keep going. It's just a period of time. Things change. That is our constant in this world. It's about changing and growing and experiencing. That's what we're here to do, is experience life. And that is good and that is bad, because that good and bad's our perception, right? So it's about experiencing all of that and just being able to share your experience and share what you're going through with others, and your ideas and your songs and your all of these wonderful words that come to you. I feel that it's never shared. It's never on deaf ears. It's never being shared to deaf ears. I feel that somebody will get something out of it,
Mhm.
even if it's just a seed planted in their mind. So this is a part where you shine. So tell us how others can find you, or what places, what your website is, your Facebook, all of that good stuff. How can people find you besides here on IPMA?
Well, so I do have a Bandcamp page, a Bandcamp account, or yeah, Bandcamp page, I guess, and all my music is on there. There are some most of the stuff that I put out lands on digital distribution, and you can find me on any of them, on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever. And I also have a YouTube channel, which, if you see my name down there at the bottom of the screen, that's the name of the channel. And I have a Facebook page, excuse me, which is Jon Anastasio Music. And you're welcome to sign up there, join it. I don't have any shows on the calendar right now. I'm sort of in a phase of taking a break and doing some writing. And so, I'm planning to sort of relaunch at the beginning of the year. And but in the meantime, I've got 4 albums and a couple of singles on Bandcamp, and the albums are all on digital distribution. So yeah, you can find me anywhere out there on digital. So
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, this was a wonderful interview, and I'm so glad I was able to sit down with you and speak with you and let everybody else get a little glimpse of who you are and what you are sharing with the world, because I feel that it is very worthwhile.
well, thank you. I appreciate your time, and thanks for setting this up. It's good to be here, and yeah, just thank you. Thanks to everybody who listens.
Well, thank you very much. And that's Jon Martin Anastasio, and really enjoyed it. So we will see you next time. And don't forget to go check out Bandcamp and Facebook. Go find this wonderful artist and listen to his wonderful songs that really will move your heart and your soul, and maybe even take you on a different path, right? All right. Thank you for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.